Alright, I'm gonna need some help here, guys. What the hell did I just watch? Welcome back, horror fans. I'm Leo, and Bootube Breakdowns is here to save your scary movie night. Right off the bat, Mad God scores a 7.0 out of 10, landing it solidly in our Pumpkin King category. But here's the thing. I've already had to experience a time-dilated evisceration to continue the psychedelic cycle of creation and destruction, just to get you the score. And in a few minutes, I'll show you exactly why this film earned its rating. If you disagree with my score at the end of the video, be sure to let me know how much you want to send an assassin to the underworld in an attempt to break the cycle. And then like, comment, and subscribe about it. Now let's get right into it. Mad God is like watching someone's nightmare filmed straight out of their rotting subconscious and then stitched together with stop-motion clay, rust, and blood. There isn't a traditional plot so much as a descent into hell, a literal, industrial, and biological hell. We follow a gas-masked figure, the assassin, who travels downward through endless layers of grotesque landscapes. War-torn wastelands, diseased cities, and factories where humanoid creatures are tortured, crushed, and discarded like garbage. Every level of this world is packed with obscene details, mutated beings, mechanical monstrosities, and the constant suggestion that existence itself is a cycle of suffering and decay. Dialogue is non-existent, and the story feels more like a fever dream stitched together with dread, filth, and religious decay. The deeper it goes, the less sense it makes in conventional terms, until the narrative dissolves completely into pure imagery of destruction and rebirth. Phil Tippett's decade-long obsession results in a film that is equal parts art installation and psychological punishment. Mad God isn't here to entertain exactly. It's here to bury you alive in clay, ash, and screaming faces. Now this one's difficult to rate, mostly because the film doesn't bother with dialogue and barely pretends to have a story. On paper, it looks like a straightforward mission. Some top-worlder sent an assassin down into the hellscape of the Mad God to plant a bomb and snuff it out. Simple enough until the bomb doesn't work and the assassin gets captured, dragged into what amounts to a torture chamber, and doubles as both exposition and visual manifesto. The deeper we go, the more the film reveals, not through plot beats but through endless grotesque world building, that paints the Mad God's realm as a nightmare ecosystem of decay and cruelty. Technically, the plan succeeds and the Mad God dies, but success here feels more like a punctuation mark than a climax. And that's the real trick of it. The story isn't the point. The story is just scaffolding, an excuse to keep descending further into Tippett's diseased imagination. It's less about narrative payoff and more about setting in the rot, soaking in the imagery until you're overwhelmed. That approach works in its own way, but it also leaves gaps. Questions and perspectives that dialogue might have answered are instead abandoned in the muck. Still, a stripped-down story isn't automatically a bad one. It keeps things lean, direct, and functional, even if the whole thing sometimes feels like a ride through purgatory with no guide. Story lands a flat 5 out of 10. The pacing here gets special treatment, mostly because the movie isn't about telling a story. It's about dragging you through an experience. Nothing lingers too long, nothing feels rushed, and it's all because the actual plot progression is irrelevant. The point is to wallow in the grotesque, to sit with images so warped or beautiful that they burn into your brain whether you want them there or not. Every detour, every little side vignette isn't filler. It's another brick in the nightmare architecture of this world. Traditional pacing metrics collapse under that weight because this isn't a ride from point A to point B. It's a guided tour through hell where the point is to keep looking. That's why some horror fans might roll their eyes and complain that it drags, but for me it's exactly right. The pacing is deliberate, suffocating, and unavoidable. The perfect rhythm for a descent into madness. Pacing gets a 10 out of 10. The fear factor is a little interesting for this movie to consider. No, there's no booze, but by all accounts, the world itself is a horrifying one. Life is not considered sacred, but rather inconvenient. Things exist only to be tortured and to suffer. The very secretions of the tortured, such as blood, shit, and puke, are repurposed into other facsimiles of life that are enslaved, tortured, and only exist after the fact to be slaughtered. The world is dirty, brutal, and unforgiving. If you are sensitive to disturbing imagery, I could understand why it's a difficult watch for some. Also, the stop motion aspect of it drives it into uncanny valley territory. Personally, however, I'm used to disturbing imagery in film for shock value, and it's a little disappointing in the grand scheme of things. The project was started back in 1987, and in context, if this film would have come out back then, during the year of RoboCop and Predator, the imagery here would have been a genre-defining moment for horror. However, over the 30-year stretch, almost all of the aspects with shock value for this movie have been presented in film in one way or another. Ultimately, this film came out too little, too late. And it's really a shame due to how poignant and well done this film was. While not scary per se, disturbing is more the word I would use to describe the movie. But the sadism and evil of this world brings this one up to a 3 out of 10. From so many angles, this movie is a visual treat. The entire ride is bloody, brutal, and disgusting. Normally, a movie like this could be chalked up to shock value horror, but the stop motion aspect of the movie is what sends it over the top into something more than a dark visual masterpiece. From the introduction, where the assassin is being lowered to the depths of this world, you see layer upon layer of skeletons. You start with humans, then you go to dinosaurs, and then what is essentially the remains of eldritch terrors, showing that the world was created over billions of cycles of torture and destruction. The assassin is as much an active participant in the story as is an observer. In a sense, the assassin is a visual representation of the audience. The torture scene and the play on time with the clocks, showing that from our perspective, things are passing quickly, but for the assassin, the whole thing takes an eternity, was a fantastic scene. By far, my favorite scene, however, is when the alchemist's torturer goes to feed his little creatures, and he sadistically releases this spider monster to eat the kid of a mushroom person. While the kid screams and begs as he is dragged into the spider's lair, they pass by some roaches playing cards that get briefly distracted, then nonchalantly go back to playing cards. I actually cackled when I saw this scene because the brutality the audiences witness is unfathomable, but the brutality of the world of insects is beyond the comprehension of most humans. I'm not sure if it was genius from the creator or just serendipity, but watching the bugs see things play out like it was just another Tuesday was one of the funniest things I could have experienced in this whole movie. This is amongst the many reasons I ultimately give this movie a 10 out of 10. Ambiguous endings can be a gamble, but this one leans fully into the chaos. The assassin's baby, which I believe to be an analogy for the soul, is ripped out, crushed, and refined into a psychedelic dust for the mad god to snort like some sort of divine cocaine. The implication? This god lives on a loop of creation and destruction, fueled by the essence of what it consumes. We watch whole worlds form and collapse in an instant, a cosmic screensaver of futility. Then comes the kicker. The bomb does finally go off, the mad god seemingly destroyed, only for the film to cut to the smug top world leader peering into the abyss like he's checking his mail. Maybe he's the real god. Maybe nothing was destroyed. Maybe the whole film was a fever dream. It doesn't really matter. The ambiguity is the point, reinforcing the futility, the madness, and the sheer pointlessness of trying to pin this world down. It's not perfect, but it's a fitting end. I give this ending a 7 out of 10. So that's Bootube Breakdowns' take on Mad God. Averaging our scores gives this movie a 7.0 out of 10, which places it in our Pumpkin King category. Do you agree with my rating? Scream your score in the comments and tell me what horror flick I should get next. If this saved your spooky vibes, smash that like, share with your horror crew, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to Bootube Breakdowns for more killer verdicts. Keep it creepy, and I'll haunt you in the next review.